the blockbuster of the year, mentioned patriarchy, I think, a dozen times. And by
Barbie was a terrible film. I mean, I don't know, man. I went to see Barbie with a female friend towards the end of the summer, after all the hype had sort of died down. And I only really went to see it because people were talking about it in the space. I've been on Access Vegas, and Mike Sartain, the first thing Mike Sartain says, right, we're going to talk about Barbie. And I'm like, oh, shit, I haven't even seen the damn thing. So, you know, I was like, well, what am I going to say for the first 20 minutes of this podcast? It was obviously something that got talked about a lot. I felt like I should see it. I watched it. I don't know, man. For me, it was very meh, you know? I thought there were some funny bits. I just wasn't really feeling it. I mean, obviously it wasn't entirely aimed at me. I thought they sort of muddied the waters a little bit as well, because on the one hand, you could say, well, it was this very sort of feminist film that highlighted the plight of women because women are expected to conform to these stereotypes and et cetera, and that's the whole Barbie thing. But then on the other hand, they were sort of covering their bases by saying the same thing about Ken and saying, yeah, but men are also forced to conform to these masculine standards as well, and is that a problem? So I came out of it thinking, well, so basically you're saying both genders have it rough. So life's tough, right? So where does that really get us? I didn't kind of see the overall point of it, if that makes sense.
About the third, I'd had enough of it. You know, I don't even know what
that's a company obviously that has a ton, way more than on average female execs at the top, which I'm sure you know about.
Yeah.
A leader.
All right, so JBB, who's a supporter of the channel, so thanks for tuning in. He says, this fool is straight up lying. I assume you mean Chris. I assume you don't mean me. Maybe you do mean me. If so, thank you very much. But when you say that, what do you mean? Why? And you're putting about the way his eyes are looking and stuff like that. But what do you think he's lying about specifically? I mean, I know people have differing opinions on Chris. Some people feel that he, I don't know how to put it, panders maybe a little bit. So let me know if you guys have got any further thoughts on this or your opinions on Chris. Let me know in the chat. I'll be interested to hear them.
The director, the production crew, all of this stuff. I didn't see much patriarchy sitting behind the scenes of that movie.
Well, it never works. It never works.
So the thing with the patriarchy as well, I had this conversation with Pixie. You know, you guys will know Pixie. You know, she's a feminist. She's a progressive girl. She often appears on these podcasts. She's on Fresh and Fit and whatever, and Valuetainment and all this stuff. And I know I'm friends with her from Miami, and her friend Erin as well, Straighterate. And you know, I've asked her a couple of times and said, well, you know, what is it now? Like, what is this manifestation of the patriarchy that we still need to, or you guys still need to, you know, overcome? You need to fight. Like, what is left that needs to be eradicated as far as you guys are concerned? And I don't want to misquote her here, or maybe we'll get her on at some point and we can have the conversation directly. But I've never heard her really give. I mean, there are certain things they'll talk about the gender pay gap. Again, but I mean, that seems to have been debunked somewhat. I mean, if you watch the Jordan Peterson interview, she'll talk about it's these very nuanced sort of small things. But I mean, it seems to me, and look, I'm not living in a vacuum here. Obviously, I have female friends, I have a girlfriend, I have female members of the family and everything like that. And living in the West, living in London, in the UK, spending time in America, I just don't see. Again, this is like, you know, what male privilege or whatever, but I don't see this hugely oppressive system operating that's really denigrating and pushing women down. Do you know what I mean? Like, if anything, it seems to be kind of the opposite, and they get more into this as we go on.
It's the other way. You know, if you have an all-female cast, a female director, female studio boss, you know, and it's based on a story that promotes women at the expense of men, that's fine. You know, the only narrative that needs to be dealt with is if women are not at least equal in every regard, or are not portrayed as glowing heroines, and then all hell breaks loose.
The problem that you have is most portrayals of women in modern cinema show them as flawless. They don't need to overcome anything at all in order to be successful. They're born perfectly natural. Perfect example of this from The Critical Drinker, the 2 Mulan movies. You'll remember the first one, the animated one, and then they did a live action. In the first one, the protagonist is smaller and weaker and needs to use her cunning and her nous and work incredibly hard to be as good as the guys that are around her. It's a inspiring story of someone who doesn't have everything immediately, working sufficiently cleverly and sufficiently hard and consistently to overcome their challenges. Roll that forward to the live action version of it. She was bestowed with being the best in the world. She didn't need to do anything. And the only challenge that she needed to overcome were the men around her not believing in her sufficiently. It's patronizing. It's patronizing to women. If I was a woman and I was basically being fed, you are perfect as you are. You don't ever need to overcome anything, and any challenges that you face are exclusively because of the world out there being oppressive onto you. That's not inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree with that, really. And I think there's an important point here about self-improvement. I mean, the men's self-improvement space is very big, as we know, all right? I mean, you've got from people, you know, like me doing this stuff to you've got the guys in the manosphere, you've got Fresh and Fit, and then you've got Chris Williamson, and then you've got Joe Rogan, you know, right up to the stratosphere of this stuff. There's a lot of people out there. I mean, Wes Watson is another dude I've been listening to recently. You've got Jocko Willink. There's a lot of guys. I mean, you arguably Tate, people have their issues with him, but I mean, it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? It's like get up, go to the gym, lift weights, get to work, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Like men are very, very, very much encouraged now in the culture to get out there and grind and do it. And rightly so, because as we always say, the burden of performance is on men, okay? So men in a way don't really have a choice because well, you do. You can not do any of that stuff, and you can sit in your bedroom and do fuck all. But the reality is, you're going to get left behind in the dating marketplace, at least, and probably in the career marketplace and business and everything else, if you don't attend to these things. Like there's an expectation on men to self-improve. It doesn't seem that, and I don't consume a lot of media that's aimed at women, so this isn't definitive. But from what I've seen, it doesn't seem like there's the same amount of content that is pushed towards women, telling them to self-improve. And I just think from a human perspective, that's not a good thing, all right? Because I think that we should all be on a journey, whether you're a man, you're a woman, whatever, we should all be on a journey of self-improvement because none of us is born perfect. Now, the problem, of course, you've got is that if a woman she's born, she gets to the age of 18, 19, 20, she's very good looking, she's naturally, you know, in good shape, etc. She doesn't really need to do a lot, certainly not for the first few years, you know, for the first like 10 until maybe she hits 30 or whatever. She doesn't need to do a lot because genetically she's just in great shape anyway. And as we would always say, what that means is she's afforded these amazing opportunities that the average guy, and even beyond the average guy, even the Chad, for the most part, is not going to be afforded. Okay, like she's going to get taken to the Oscar party, she's going to be on the yacht, she's going to be on this, she's going to be on that. You know, she's going to be invited by A-list celebrities to these different things. Okay, the average dude is just not going to get those opportunities. Okay, unless he's selling drugs, maybe, I don't know. But like for the most part, the average dude, and even the above average dude, is not going to get that level of access. So women, not all women, but women who are blessed in those departments tend to get a lot handed to them on a silver platter very early on. And so the necessity for self-improvement for women is lower. And on top of that, because men are expected to step up to the plate and be the providers and be the guys who go in there and sort it out and look after her and everything else, there's even less of an onus on self-development for women, which I think is just a bad thing for women. Because, as I say, I think all of us, while we're here, we should be aiming to become the best version of ourselves that we can. Now, that's not to say that no women do anything. Obviously, they do. There's a lot of women who are very into their fitness, into their health, into their gym, into their wellness, holistic meditation, women who are content creators. I mean, there are women who do amazing things, but I just don't feel that it is sort of pushed on them in the culture as much as it is on men. And I just can't see that being a good thing.
How does that inspire a new generation of girls?
Totally agree. In the same way, I believe that the problem of a lot of young men is this toxic masculinity weaponized badge of dishonor.
Okay, so Don DeMarco says, okay, well, no, actually, SJ says, I find Chad Williamson pandas hard like Mike Sartain on Access. It's so cringe. I thought Rollo was jelly like Pearl, but Chad pandas and fence sits. No actionable pieces from Chad. Okay. JBB, his lingo sounds like it's right out of a certain book or podcast I've listened to quite regularly. Cough. Okay. I guess you're talking about Mr. Tomasi there. I could be wrong. The issue with Chris is he stops short when he senses the truth will hit women too hard. His self-admission, he dodges convos with Rollo and the other RP guys. Okay. He has good chats and isn't from an overall bad place, but still. Okay, yeah. He says, JBB, he's still a little soft when delivering the truth. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to like massively disagree with that. You're probably right. I think it becomes hard. And I'm not excusing it, but I think it becomes hard for content creators, particularly as they grow in stature and popularity, to sort of deliver the harder truths, if you like, particularly in the current climate. So I think you're probably right about some of this stuff. What can you say? I still think, as one of you guys has said there, I think he's coming from a good place, and I think at least he's opening up the conversation, which is probably, I would argue, better than nothing.